Hey now, Alexandra, no I, and we're getting it together one step at a time. So if you are new, or even just to refresh your memory, we started with making a master list, and then I remembered that that's not something that is optimal for me to do too close to bedtime because then when I'm in bed, laying in the relative darkness and silence, I will still be thinking of things to add to the list. So already we're making progress because we're learning things about ourselves. so I started with a handwritten list. I added things to it in my notes app. And then what I actually wound up doing just because of the way I wanted to visualize it. I actually moved, I'm an Apple user, but I'm sure you can achieve this sort of objective by other means. What I wound up doing was going to my reminders app and creating a new list and putting all of the things, and then I created sections. So I did, because I already have my weekly to-do list. The sections that I created for the master list were within 1 month, within 3 months, going, back to what we were talking about with that 12-week year, within 1 year. Initially, my last section was within 5 years, but I realized there were a couple of things that warranted me making a section for within 3 years. So within 1 month, within 3 months, within 1 year, within 3 years, within 5 years. And so I moved all of these things digitally, but again, you could use index cards to do this. You could cut out, if you wrote it on a piece of paper, you could cut out the things that you wrote and physically sort them out, kind of make it crafty. I know getting your hands involved can be very satisfying. So we've done that. So in my first draft, I did wind up adding some things to my plan for this week. So there are a few different ways that you can look at weekly planning. You can, this is where it pays off to be honest with yourself about the way that your brain works. So some people can look at their to-do list and they'll kind of mentally know like, oh, okay, I don't have anything to do after work on Wednesday, so that's the day that I can, return stuff to the store. I'll go pick up groceries since I'll be on that side of town next to the store that I really like, but I'm not always close to, that sort of thing. Uh, Others of us need for it to be on our calendar. I used to say, it is so funny how we can move away from what works because we think we found a better method, and that may or may not actually be true. But I definitely recall a time when one of my catchphrases was, if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. And somehow I stopped scheduling things, or I think when I was saying that, I wasn't necessarily putting errands or the prep preparation preparatory no preparation steps that are part of larger things. I wasn't always scheduling those. And while they would typically get done over the years as I developed more obligations and commitments and just the different things that life throws at you as you get older, including hormonal fluctuations and life stressors, I need things to be on the calendar, including, yeah, not just the scheduled things, but also the things that need to get done. And so they must be scheduled. Now, with the most recent iOS updates and Mac OS as well, you can set it up where your reminders are visible on your calendar. However, with that, you can put it at the time that you want, but it won't necessarily block out the amount of time that you want. So you can either manually, if you know, okay, I'm going to run errands on Wednesday evening, you know, if we're sticking with this example, I'm returning, let's just say, returning an item at Kohl's, going across that shopping plaza to Kroger. Let me say that that will take an hour. You also want to factor in your travel time to and from. Because if you are supposed to be running a Zoom at 7 o'clock, you don't want to assume that you can leave the store at 6:59. No, because you should be at home in front of your computer because you're running the Zoom. It'd be different if it was a listen only scenario. And if you do it that way, because you made that plan, that might also help you to remember that you have that plan coming up in addition to any reminders that your devices may provide. However, if you like a little bit of variety, if you want to, sometimes the element of surprise, it can be helpful for people, or again, just variety. You can use, there's different apps. I can't remember what app I saw an ad for once, but there was a cost for it. So then I opened up good Google, my good sis Google, and I asked for alternatives to that app. And then I found out about Reclaim, which is not who is not sponsoring today's video, though I will include a referral link in the description. But the two, well, there's quite a few things, quite a few use cases available, but the two main things that I use it for are to schedule habits. So when I was first looking to walk more, I used it to schedule walking blocks. I could indicate what my ideal time would be, uh, and and how long I wanted it to be, whether that was a range, whether that was a specific time. And so knowing that and the frequency of the desired habit, it would automatically schedule it based on the parameters that I had indicated. It's also, and the free tier allows for up to 3 habits. The tasks are the other thing that I use it for. So, say if you have a one off task that you know is going to take an hour, you can enter it and it will find an hour somewhere. You can also say, okay, altogether, this will take 4 hours, split it up. Um, you know, into chunks that are minimum 1 hour, maximum 2 hours. It can do that. So in that instance, if it's 4 hours, you might see it 2 to 3 different times based on the openings in your schedule. I have used this for training courses that were self-guided that I knew would be a total of 40 hours, but I knew that I did not want to work on them for 8 hours at a time. So in that case, I would say that it would take 40 hours altogether, split it up into chunks between, X amount of time and Y amount of time. And if this is something you want to know more about and you want me to do like a full walkthrough of Reclaim, jump down in the comments and let me know, and I'd be happy to do that. Uh, I found, especially with the habits, that that was a good way for me to get establish that initial rhythm. And then once I felt like, so you can make it where it will automatically mark something as completed if it was scheduled, or that you have to manually say it was scheduled, or else it will assume that you didn't do it and it'll reschedule it. I've tried both approaches. I prefer where I have to mark that I did it or that I was working on it for that amount of time so that it takes away from the total, especially in the example of those longer training courses. The reason that I like to use something like this is that for me, it does not feel good when I've scheduled something and I wind up having to like scoot it all around myself or delete it because I don't get around to it. Because, of course, I can say every day I'm going to go to, I do put sleep on my calendar. um, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I'm going to do a morning yoga flow for an hour starting at 6 a.m. And then I'm going to get outside and, all that stuff. And if 3, 4 days goes by and I'm like, oh, well, okay, that's not my sleep window. Let me scoot that to correct it. And well, no, I didn't do yoga today. Oh, I didn't do yoga yesterday either. Like that doesn't feel that great. So that's where having something automated that it depends on what motivates you. Because for some people, they need that sting of like, because that will prompt them to act. Where other people, that'll just make them be like, okay, F it. I'm not, don't even worry about it. So um, I I'm doing a mix. So what it's yeah, it is a mix, but I'm using Reclaim to do it because I want to, there are some medical appointments I want to make. I want to make sure that gets done tomorrow because it's something that's been on my to-do list for a while. So I did, and also just a little bit more about Reclaim. I use Google Calendar and it integrates beautifully with that. There are some other integrations available. I'm not sure which all calendars it works with though, but I definitely know it works with Google. And so it will actually put the stuff on your Google Calendar. That, yeah, super helpful. Um, so I specified that I want to work on that tomorrow afternoon when I have some stuff to take care of in the morning. I want to do that early afternoon because we know sometimes offices like to close early, especially now, particularly now that we're in December. People, and that's something you'll want to consider with the various to-dos you'll have for this month. People are going to be half working, honestly. Folks will be cutting out early. There will be extra closures because it's not just the holidays, there's the eves as well. Some places will close early on the eves, some places will be closed all day, excuse me, on the eves. Um, you, depending on what industries you're working with, there may be dates you need to keep track of that, like their books close or that they stop accepting appointments. So you may want to really front load the things that you need to take care of this month. And again, uh, earlier in the day is better. So while I wish I could make these calls in the morning or even on the way home from my morning commitment, I, when I'm walking down the street, and that's part of what has limited my activity on this channel, even, is that when I'm walking down the street, the background noise is very loud, not conducive to phone calls or recording. So I would want to wait until I'm in a controlled environment. Um, and also that way I'll have a quiet background and I can, be on at my calendar and include stuff right away. And also, when it comes to things like making medical appointments, especially if you have a few different ones, you may want to, of course, there's the questions you ask once you're at the appointment, but even when you're making the appointment, because this will be my first time really using my current medical insurance. And so I will want to ask about whether I'll need referrals for some of the other appointments that I need to make. Because the reason I want to ask that off top is that if I don't need a referral, then that can be the next call I make, is to schedule those other appointments. But if I do need a referral, it's good for me to know that up front so I'm not wasting my time making those other calls just to find out that I need a referral from my PCP. So that is, um, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I did want to circle back though about the outcome of some of the preparation I took. I mentioned in part one, or step one rather, that I had put my clothes out the night before. I even talked about some of like a couple of other details that I wanted to prepare just so that there would be pretty much no room for error in the morning. So I was thrilled. It worked out beautifully that I had put the outfit out because while I woke up with ease, which I was very pleasantly surprised about, I don't know that I was clear headed enough to have made sure that I had all the layers I needed to be leaving with the temperature as low as it was. I'm making sure that, um, so some of what I wanted to do that I did not do is I didn't actually pull the mask out that I was going to wear, but I knew that I knew exactly where my masks were. The clean ones are in a little baggie that is with, like, it's in my it's where my clothes are. So that didn't take too much time. I did make a point of eating this morning before I left, and I did drink coffee. That's part of my morning routine anyway, but I also knew that between what was on calendar and the errands that I wanted to run today, since I was going to be out, I would get home after the end of my caffeine window. So the reason I did want to come back and talk about that is, so what happened was, what was on my calendar today was, it's the first Sunday of the month, which is the largest Buddhist meeting of the month. And typically that would go from 10 to 11 or shortly thereafter, potentially as late as 11:30. Typically, we have a study lecture in another part of the month. However, this month there was a national broadcast that was only going to be made viewable today. So that was going to start at 11:30. So I knew that I was going to be leaving earlier, which also means like burning calories earlier, right? Burning energy earlier, what have you. Uh, and I would be in this space where I would not be able to eat from a little before 10 until 12:30, 1 o'clock, when you consider, the people you haven't seen in a while, the conversations you have, all of that. In conversations I had with people, I noticed people grumbling about being hungry, people who had been frazzled in the morning because they were trying to figure out what to wear. Things hadn't gone according to plan, and that kind of threw off their schedule. And so that those hearing those things, seeing those things just reinforced for me, okay, you have been that person. You have been in those situations where you were hungry when you didn't have to be, when you were frazzled in the morning trying to figure out what to wear, when you knew the night before that you had an early morning. So that again just reinforced for me. This is why, when, particularly if a day is out of the ordinary, it is hugely beneficial to take a little bit of extra time, because it didn't take a lot of extra time, but to take that extra time the day before, you don't even have to wait till bedtime, because bedtime you're not necessarily clear headed either because you're ready to go to bed. Uh, but just taking the time to do that preparation, even to factor in, okay, because my schedule looks different than it usually does, when will I eat? Because you also don't want to fail to factor in hunger, because when you do that, by the time you get an opportunity to eat, you're if you have any parameters or goals around the way you eat, they will all be out the window, because now you're ravenous. And you may also be limited to what's immediately available. Or so, yes, planning ahead, that it's like, yes, I'm on the right track for, you know, I don't even, I know words, I promise. Um, there's a saying about like the best time to have started this was a year ago, but like the second best time is today type of mindset. So it's like, even though my life could have been far easier in the past 2, 3 years, if some of these things were part of my regular practice, that is true. And now that I am intentionally making them a part of my practice, I can already see the benefits of doing so. So, thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye.